Hello and welcome to MSE 402 Project Management. My name is Dale Deerdorf. I am your facilitator, instructor, and coach for all of the sessions. It's time now for Module 6 course lecture, and it's going to be on project closing. It's the project closing phase of that academic project management flow that we showed you. You can see the elements that are included in the closing phase are the closing of the project, it's the capturing of the lessons learned, it's putting together best practices, and then ultimately this outbrief of the information in a team presentation and putting together a project report, followed by a peer review where you would review the other participants in the project and their performance. So let's jump in and take a peek at exactly where this information is going to be coming from and in our process flow. So you can see our process flow here showing that closing process group being the last of those. Initiating, then planning, then executing, then monitoring and controlling, and then the closing process. That's the official flow. And then we had the information stage, which was the first stage. So this caps off everything. This includes all 6 of those. Now, I want you to go ahead and pull up your PMBOK, grab your PMBOK. The last piece we're going to talk is the delivery performance domain, and that is on page 80. So if you pull up page 80, it's going to give you information on that particular domain. And the delivery performance domain addresses activities and functions associated with delivering the scope and quality of the project that was undertaken to achieve. It's the capstone. It caps everything off for us as we close the project down. You can see that flow that we've gone through and all of the pieces. You can also see that there's a section of monitoring and controlling that still overlaps into the closing phase as we close the project, but you can see the elements that are required as we finish off and we get to the end. Now, the closing process group consists of those processes performed to conclude all activities across all process groups to formally complete the project phase or contractual obligations. It is ultimately the handshake. It is where we finish everything up, and once you close the project, it's over. Now, let's talk about project closure, because projects are sometimes kind of hard to close. So let's just talk about this. When projects are finished, we refer to them as closed. They may also be prematurely closed if they are finished early on, or if some of the aspects of the project are removed. A project may be abandoned due to costs or unpredictable lack of resources, unknown unknowns. You know, it's also possible that a project will be closed because the organization's needs have changed and they no longer need that project completed. There are a few steps that are required for closing a project, and we're going to walk you through those. They're going to be similar to the steps that you're going to run through in your course module itself. You'll be able to see that some of these are going to repeat themselves. The customer must accept the deliverables. Without that, contractually, you cannot close a project. Resource usage is shut down. Project team members are reassigned, and all project assets are released from their current usage. That's got to happen. You can't have somebody hanging on to a project and still say that it is closed. And then all project records and documents are archived. Finally, the project bills are paid. All the accounts, or the time card numbers that people are charging to, all of those are closed. And then finally, the evolution of the project team. The members, the supplies, the subcontractors and project managers is conducted. And that evaluation is done in a variety of ways. So let's talk about what some of those are going to be. So from a project closure standpoint, it's possible for all the work in the project to be finished, but the project is still incomplete. There's an old saying, the work is not complete until the paperwork is finished. I have seen projects linger and linger and linger, and it took forever to close off to accurately close a project because we had poor paperwork. Okay, so let's talk about this. It's especially true if the 2 steps required to properly close out a project are project closure, procurement's closure. That procurement's closure is another element. So you need to look at these separately. The process is simpler for the project manager if you break these apart, and you can see these different pieces in this phase. And this phase can be particularly difficult for project managers since this is the phase of the project in which all of the resources are being redistributed to other projects. Your key resources, the people that have been helping you all along the way, are now finding new work. They're being pulled away and they are looking at other activities that they need to do. So the following activities are required to properly close a project. 1, the customer or sponsor accepts that product. Give it to me, whether it's a product, an application, whatever that final deliverable is that was in the contract has got to be accepted by the customer or the major sponsor. If they refuse it, your project is still not closed. Now, final reports are completed. Any final reports must be completed and released or archived, or it's some way we can look at it and say this task has been completed. You have to capture lessons learned. Those are completed. You need to put together best practices. You review those and you update them with the information from the lessons learned. And then all of the important records and documents are recorded. Those could be quality documents, they could be manufacturing documents, they could be testing documents, they could be procurement documents that were put together in the beginning of the project. So the project team and all of the resources are ultimately released. That releasing is very, very important. So don't forget that project closure and procurement closure are comparable, but both consist of the following. So that similar spots for both these. Verification that contract requirements are complete. Verification and validation is its own process sometimes, and that can be quite lengthy prior to the completion and as part of that completion activity. You may have a systems engineering group that was responsible for creating requirements verification. That may come in and they may be working with you to try to make sure that you've got everything completed. Negotiation for any outstanding issues. Everything should be accounted for. All final invoices and bills must be paid. And then completing a product or procurement audit. Unlike a project audit, this examines just the procurements in an attempt to improve the process for any future projects, and then completion and archival of those final reports and records and lessons learned. The procurement lessons learned. The collection or return of any outstanding assets have got to be distributed back to where they first came from. And if you've gotten through that list, you are in you've been able to complete procurement's closure. Now, let's talk about lessons learned. I've had a conversation with a couple key people, Russ Akoff and Shel Rovin, prior to their deaths, along with a couple other people. And I shared with them that we kept making the same mistakes over and over and over again, even with lessons learned. That we had lessons learned that we would review at the beginning of a project, and it seemed like for some reason we continued to continue making those same mistakes that we had made on previous projects. What was shared with me is that there is a process called unlearning, where you unlearn what you knew before and relearn new activities, and that in conjunction with these lessons learned is probably a better method or model for you. So I want you to remember that. That's going to be, I'll call it pracademic information coming into you on how to make sure you don't make the same mistakes over and over again. But on lessons learned, we capture those. And there's a reason why we, look at effective lessons learned, and the policy for it is to generate better methods within the organization through sharing and improving knowledge. We want to discontinue those poor practices. We want to continue to improve the development process and our project management. And next item is to improve the performance and productivity of the organization ultimately, to improve the efficiency of the project schedule, to minimize the costs of our projects, and then finally to enhance the quality of the products. Now, it sounds like a lot, but if you actually run a lessons learned session or capture lessons learned, I think you're going to find that it will improve your overall efficiency and replicate your ability to create your best practices. This process is concerned with how issues are encountered in the future, how you overcome them, and how they might be avoided in the future. Now, while lessons learned might be obtained from a single project, they may have applications to many different projects in the organization. So to improve project performance, it's essential to adopt positive practices and avoid the negative ones. Now, let's take a look at what are some of the ways that we can make that happen. The first thing is continuous process improvement. Looking at things from a PDSA or a Plan, Do, Study, Act process, that Deming-Schuhart model, gives you a continuous process improvement mini cycle that you can use. So continuous improvement is an ongoing process in which the organization searches for ways to improve their performance. This is not a one and done activity. You should be thinking about doing that in every step and every phase as you're working your way through your project. Now, the need for a repository. For this module, we're going to be exploring two conventional types of repositories. One is going to be a lessons learned repository, and that's a database that contains all of the lessons learned, and it should be allowed for the users to be able to view and search. Everyone should be able to get in and look at that. And then in addition to that, you have a lessons learned documentation repository, and that's going to be a library that contains project-specific documents. And this is where you can go to keep the documentation for each of the lessons learned and how they will be linked together up in that lessons learned repository. So the library and the repository are separate pieces, but it is all part of the lessons learned process. So let's look at how all this fits together into this process. There's three steps. You see collection, we gather the lessons learned. Storage and retrieval, we basically put them or umbrella them in a location where we can access them again, and then they are used then to go off and work on continuous process improvement. So that the lessons learned will identify which of the practices within the process are inefficient and which are efficient. And then by documenting these as a learning tool, it allows us to ensure that our future projects benefit from everything learned during the project. Now, let's take these step by step by step. So let's identify lessons learned. By identifying and collecting, recording the failures and successes within a project before they're forgotten, we have begun the lessons learned process. Information from lessons learned can be acquired at any point during the project. They are discussed formally during the post-implementation review, and in the case of larger projects, during phase exit reviews. So you may have a phase staged program or project, and it has to get through this stage, and at the end of that stage, you can then move to the next one, and they capture lessons learned at each one of those exit points. So remember that. They're discussed formally during that post-implementation review, and in the case of larger projects, we have the following tools that are useful. Post-implementation review, that's a review that is created during the project closeout and where we define the lessons learned for the project. The phase exit review, this review is conducted at the end of each phase in the project lifecycle. These are essentially valuable for larger projects, which contain many phases. They may also serve as valuable input for the post-implementation review. Let's keep going. Step 1. Lessons learned as a part of the post-implementation review, ideally during the closeout phase of the project, and no later than 6 weeks after implementation or implementing the system. The session can be requested by either the project manager or the PMO. And it's generally done by the request of either a contractor or the project manager. And it's advisable to place a facilitator in charge who isn't part of that project team and therefore won't carry over any potential biases. It gives everyone a chance to share. They've got to be open and honest conversations that happen here. And the facilitator might send out surveys in order to be completed by appropriate team members, customers, stakeholders, and that survey can be used to focus on where the lessons learned might apply. Now you'll see in your project that I've given you a lessons learned database or template to fill out That could be mailed to you ahead of time or sent to you ahead of time to be filled out and then brought together along with a group of people where you can have that conversation during the actual session. And the facilitator will schedule a meeting and invite the appropriate team members, customers, and stakeholders. That's how we pull that together. Now, let's go ahead and look at the collection of these. During lessons learned, the team should put an emphasis on the following areas. This is what I think is important for you. The critical areas of knowledge in the organization's success, areas in which there is either lacking or excellent performance, areas in which there are complex or challenges that hadn't been encountered previously, areas which success or failure occurred in, and whether they are linked to proper or ineffective practices, any differences between the actual completion time and the estimated schedules in the project plan, any differences between the actual project costs and the estimated ones, where were your overruns if you had any or underruns, any differences between the expected scope and the quality of the products, special note of any high severity or impact problems that occurred during the project, and then perform a root cause analysis with an emphasis on key issues and how they were resolved. Make sure you capture all of that. That's going to be very valuable for you. Now, let's go on to number 4. When we document lessons learned within a week of the lessons learned session, the facilitator will distribute the meeting notes to be revised and reviewed. This will provide the facilitator all the data required to create the following documents. Now they're going to put together an executive summary, a detailed report, and they're going to take that repository submission request, that LLR, and they're going to implement that. So on the executive summary, the document summarizes the lessons learned in the project. This document is useful for a project PMO. The detailed report is a document that's comprehensive narration of the lessons learned. In your completion of your project assignment, you're going to see that you're putting together a project report. This is what we would be referring to. And then that repository will contain the data, records of the LLR database, the detailed reports, meeting notes, executive summaries, any of the information that is relevant that needs to be loaded into that data management system. Now, then you're going to put together a lessons learned request. The facilitator will complete the lessons learned request form and submit it to the PMO to add to the lessons we want to take these lessons and we want to move them over into the repository. This will allow for the documents to be reviewed later and the valuable revelations to be adopted into practices, those best practices that we're going to implement. Now, there are a few criteria that should make for a valuable lessons learned. And if we ask these following questions, it'll give us the ability to determine their value. Is this lesson significant? Is it valid? Is it applicable? Because there are going to be minute changes that you may want to do, little shifts, little adjustments, but they don't fall into something that would be significant from a lessons learned standpoint. We want to capture the big bangs for our buck. Is this lesson based on actual project research? Did the outcome of the lesson positively or negatively affect the objectives of the project? Is the lesson able to accurately describe what functions should be done differently next time? Is this lesson able to illustrate how to improve performance in the way it is understandable? And then does this lesson show a clear cause and effect? The next final piece is going to be, is this lesson replicatable? Remember those. Those are the elements of it. And the lessons learned should also include project information, and that project information should be the project start date, the project completion date, a lessons learned statement, the recommendations, actions. So the recommended actions, supplementary documentation, and contact information for the lessons owner. So whoever provided information on a lesson learned, you need their information also. So in case you want to go back and ask them more information on it, you've got their information, their contact information, who, what, where, when, why, all of that is really, really important. So oftentimes lessons learned have been gathered and placed within a system, and the organization continues to make these same mistakes, as I talked about earlier. To address this, team members will need to actively unlearn the old behaviors and relearn better ones or new ones. Now let's talk about storage and retrieval. Storing of the lessons learned. Typically, the PMO keeps the information from the lessons learned inside a DMS, a data management system. Everyone in the organization should have access to them, especially the people involved in current and future project management teams. The lessons should be searchable by category, keyword, and there's got to be easy access to come in and look at this and say, what is it that I'm looking for? How do I get there? So being able to retrieve these lessons learned, you need a way to search to make the application or the applicable lessons easy to find. The search process can be refined more narrowly into types, categories, keywords, elements. Those are the types of things that would make it very, very I'll call it, you would improve your process. Now, we want, from a knowledge management standpoint, to reuse knowledge. The lessons learned are reused in an effort to incrementally improve the qualities of all of our project processes. By routinely reviewing and collecting the lessons properly, the project teams will be able to improve their processes and overcome persistent problems. Now, ideally, the project teams will not make the same mistakes over and over and over, since they will be identified in the lessons learned. But by placing this information in an easily searchable format, it will allow cross-team accessibility, which is going to be very, very valuable. Now, what are best practices? When we talk about best practices, so we've covered lessons learned, now we're going to talk about best practices. So what are they? A best practice is an idea that asserts that there is a technique, method, or process through research and application that is more effective at delivering a particular outcome than any other technique, method, or process. Number two, a best practice is an optimal way of recognized by industry to achieve a stated goal or objective. So the way the organizations will define what constitutes as a best practice will differ depending on your organization. There are some who feel this refers to a consistent method. There are others who feel that this means that everyone in the project is utilizing the same templates, the same software, the same tools, the same techniques. Okay? Project managers may have their own way of doing things, even if the methods are not within the format used by the organization. It is possible that since we have always done things this way in the past, it could be considered a best practice. So you need to remember that. Okay? Now, the following list are commonly used tactics that organizations utilize in order to develop their best practices. This is the best bang for your buck under your best practices. Standardization of tools, templates, and processes. Standardization of software. Competency development. Skills assessment. Processes for resource planning. Processes for resource allocations. Developing career paths. Developing strategic education programs. Formalizing mentoring or mentorship programs, requiring industry certifications, and then identifying and publishing PMO functions. Those are great bangs for your buck. Organizations that wish to create their best practices will have many needs that they'll need to address. Managing projects' resources effectively, or aligning projects to the goals organization, improving project status for tracking and reporting, or reducing the effort spent to complete projects successfully. All of those are issues that will need to be addressed. For organizations to remain successful in a dynamic and competitive market, they must improve the way they accomplish their strategic goals. By utilizing best practices, they'll find it easier to make decisions on which projects to undertake. Now, let's talk about project knowledge. Projects are repositories of some of the best people. These are the resources we have. They contain technical SMEs, subject matter experts, and others who have tremendous process experience. When pulling a project team together, we always try to get the best people and resources possible because we know the talent leads to higher possibility of success. In your project, you had an opportunity to pick up Niles. in the beginning in Module 1? Did you maintain him all the way through procurement, manufacture, testing? Did you keep him all the way into closing out the quality paperwork in the project? These are things that you need to remember. These SMEs have a great knowledge, and you want to capture that. Make sure that you don't lose it. So when a project is completed, closed, and disbanded, the people resources are then transitioned to new teams and process work. The skills and knowledge contained in the people's resources is a fantastic gold mine of talent for your future projects. Learning is a process of experience and practice which can be replicated and improved if we can capture the knowledge from the people resources. The following 5 project best practices can be used to increase future project performance. Number 1, be open with project knowledge. Share project knowledge. Leverage the existing knowledge. Communicate and socialize the knowledge. And finally, own the knowledge. Have an owner for it. Now, let's talk about number 1, be open with the project knowledge. Project knowledge may be sensitive. It could be confidential. It could be trademark, type of stuff, or private. It's better to be open by default. So remember, openness can reduce resistance to your project. For example, you don't want your stakeholders to feel that they weren't informed. Keeping information or knowledge a secret from others creates this us versus them mentality, which can lead to negative interactions. The next one, number 2, share that project knowledge. Avoid creating an island of knowledge that's disconnected from the business knowledge. Combine and interconnect project knowledge into the knowledge of the organization. Use project cross-mentorship and shared presentations or lunch and learn events to let everyone know what the challenges and successes have been from a previous or ongoing project. Number 3, leverage existing knowledge. It's tempting to view every project as a greenfield experiment, but it isn't. Even though each project is unique and new, this does not mean you start from scratch each time. It means that you should leverage what is already known and quickly come up to speed with the business's organizational knowledge as part of the project. Research the existing knowledge critical to the integration with an organization's processes and systems. Now, number 4, project knowledge. Communicate. And this would be one I would say communicate, and socialize the knowledge. It's not enough to stick your knowledge deliverables into Google Docs, SharePoint, or a data repository. Include socialization of this knowledge deliverable into your new project's communication plan. Add it there. Communication knowledge is unique, and different ways of using different channels of communication will improve your performance. And finally, under project knowledge, own the knowledge. Projects are transitional. You need to develop a process to understand who will own the knowledge you generate when the project's over. After you identify the knowledge, you should also include activities for knowledge transfer. Project knowledge transfer is an ongoing activity as part of the continuous process improvement, not only an afterthought when a project has had a problem or an issue. Knowledge transfer, don't forget that. And finally, in closing, I want to talk about these 5 elements. So, arrange a post-mortem. Gather the core team together to invite feedback about what worked, what didn't work, and encourage honesty. Complete the paperwork. Everything needs attention and must be signed for, which is legal proof that the fact, that all these documents have been concluded. Number 3, release your resources. You might be blocking other teams' projects if you don't release your resources once the project's done. Holding on to them until the last minute may not be the best solution for you. Archive documents. You've worked hard to have a great project documentation, so don't lose it. And then finally, the last piece, and one of the most important ones as a project manager, you should celebrate success. There's nothing wrong with rewarding your team to acknowledge a job well done. Now, that's what I had laid out for you for Module 6 for this lecture. I just wanted to let you know if you run into any problems, issues, or concerns as you're putting together your best practices, as you're putting together your lessons learned, as you're closing down your projects, feel free to contact me, okay? Listen, have a great week. Goodbye.